Council Bluffs Community School District Board of Directors. Sorry for the delay, everyone. Mr. Wilson, please call the roll.
Mr. Kazire?
Present.
Mr. Arthur?
Here.
Ms. Shudak?
Here.
Ms. Myers?
Present.
Mr. Peters?
Present.
Mr. Tripp? Here. Mr. LaFurla?
Present. Now would you please, if you can, join me in a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Before us now is approval of the agenda. Is there a motion?
I move approval of our agenda as presented.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. And the agenda has been approved. Now we have approval of our minutes from the workshop business meeting of December 14th, 2021. Is there a motion?
A motion to approve.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. And the minutes of December 14th have been approved. Next, we have public participation. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the board regarding agenda items or other matters of concern. We did not have any members of the public request time to address the board this evening. However, we did receive 2 emails from individuals from the public, Fran Mearswapar and Rhonda Hates, hopefully I got that last name pronounced correctly, regarding masks in schools. And I just wanted to mention publicly that the comments have been distributed to all of the school board members for those 2 individuals. That brings us to the superintendent's report. Dr. Murillo.
Thank you, Mr. LaFurla. At this time, we will present our student achievement. Tonight, we will have a presentation on the class of 2021 post-secondary enrollment by Dr. Borthman and Ms. Comine. Dr. Borthman, looking forward to the information. It's been such a roller coaster ride since the pandemic, but I really appreciate how we have followed this and continue to look for ways in which to improve it. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Murillo. It's my pleasure tonight to provide the board with an update on the post-secondary enrollment or college enrollment for the class of 2021. A couple things I want to point out before we get started tonight. As you know, the district has 4 strategic goals. Ms. Comine is going to go into a little bit greater depth on goal 2 later this evening. But this is another important metric that we also use to determine really the progress that we're making toward ensuring that all students graduate with a high school diploma and a second credential. Unfortunately, post-secondary enrollment is a little bit of a lagging indicator for us because we get to see how well our cohorts of students do every year and on the percentage of students that really go into post-secondary right after high school. But it takes 6 years before we can figure out if they've completed a degree. And so what I'm going to share with you tonight is some early projections on where we think that those might be, thanks to D+1, and where we see the past cohorts of students enrolling, persisting, and then completing a college credential. So if you recall, last year I brought you this report, and I started the presentation with really some dismal information about the state of college enrollment due to COVID-19. And unfortunately, the headlines that I collected this year are really not much different than they were last year. Nationally, we are still seeing a drop in post-secondary enrollment, much of that related to COVID-19. Some of it related to schools having to go into shutdown or hybrid modes, some colleges sending their students home I just heard today that Drake University is going to go all remote second semester. And so those types of interactions definitely have a bearing on whether or not students decide to go directly into the workforce, whether they decide to pursue post-secondary, or where we've seen many students decide to take a break and not go back immediately. And we know that COVID has an impact on that. The data that I'm going to share with you tonight is the data that we collect from the National Student Clearinghouse. And the National Student Clearinghouse is a not-for-profit located in Virginia. And basically their mission is to kind of collect data around post-secondary institutions and metrics that are associated with them. And they provide services both to post-secondary institutions as well as K-12 institutions such as ours. They collect enrollment information from almost all of the post-secondary institutions in the United States, covering over 3,600 institutions of higher education and covering about 99% of all college enrollments. So when we talk about this data, we have pretty good confidence that it is accurate and as close as we can get to knowing where our students land in terms of their post-secondary enrollment after high school. So the first metric that we spend time on is looking at how many students are first-time enrollments right after high school graduation, so they don't take any time off. And nationally, that is down 13% this year. And you take that with collectively where we were last year, it was down 20%. It's been a pretty big drop for many post-secondary institutions, including those here in our own state. So really 13% since 2019 is a big drop. We also look at specifically how this pandemic has impacted community colleges, and they've really kind of bore the brunt. Their enrollment is down 20% over the past 2 years. And I'm going to show you later, we see similar numbers reflected in our own local data as well. So this chart here, I wanted to give you kind of a longitudinal view of where we've been historically as a school district. This data set here goes back to 2012. And so you can see that the kind of the gold line on top is the percentage of our graduating class that enrolls in post-secondary immediately following high school graduation. You can see that we started out in the low 40s, kind of hit a high of 53% of the graduating class in 2018. And that bar that you see shaded there in pink is really the pandemic years. And you can see that very clearly in our school district, the pandemic has had quite an impact on post-secondary enrollment. It has slipped yet another about 3% this year. The bars that are below that, the orange bar shows you what our percentage of enrollment has been in two-year schools or schools such as our community college partners here in the state of Iowa. And in 2019, right before the pandemic, we had hit our largest group of students going to two-year schools, over 34% of our graduating class. Interestingly, we have rebounded during the pandemic for students attending four-year schools. And so we're up near the high 20% in 2020 and then 19% in 2021. And so those are some interesting statistics to take into consideration when you think about the decisions that families have to make or have been making here in the last couple of years. We also want to make sure that when we're looking at this data, that we look to see if we have any disparities among any of our subgroups, to make sure that our subgroups are not disproportionately represented in any of our enrollment categories. And so what this chart shows is the percentage of the cohort, the graduating class itself in the teal bar, and then the percentage of those students who go to post-secondary right after high school in the gold bar. And what you'll notice is the biggest discrepancy is really in our male students. They make up about 51% of the graduating cohort, but only 41% pursued that post-secondary education right after high school. And that's a trend that has been reflected nationally. As you look through the data from the Clearinghouse, the biggest drop that they have also seen is among males during the pandemic, deciding not to go to not to go on into post-secondary. And there's several reasons that they hypothesize that may be. Maybe that is because maybe many male students have decided to go right into the workforce. Maybe it's because many male students haven't been able to take advantage of maybe hands-on or career and technical type of courses, often offered in two-year schools when post-secondary institutions shut down and moved everything to online, which has been very difficult for students over the past couple of years. But you'll notice when we look at racial subgroups, you'll see that they are all very evenly represented with the cohort. And the area that we do have to continue to work on is our poverty subgroup. 59% of those students decided to go to post-secondary as opposed to 65% who made up the cohort. So when you look at where students continue to go after high school, it probably is no surprise to you as members of the board that Iowa Western Community College is our #1 institution of enrollment. It has been since we started tracking this data. And that should not be a surprise given the robust partnership that we have with Iowa Western Community College, the linking of the +1 pathways with our articulation agreements with our post-secondary partner at Iowa Western, and really the close relationship that we have with them that helps our students get into that D+1 credential. After Iowa Western, which makes up about 55% of all the institutions, you could combine all of the 20 other institutions all together that have the lowest enrollment, and they would make up about 26% of the class. So that leaves you really with some of our next door neighbors, University of Nebraska at Omaha, 9% enrollment, and then two of the Regents institutions, University of Iowa and Iowa State at 5% and 3% respectively. Like I said, when we look at this over time, you can see that our enrollment at Iowa Western has always been at or above 50% of the graduating class, going all the way back to 2015. And 55% is kind of that sweet spot where we've kind of, if you looked at the average of all of those together, that's where we've been. Obviously, it's down a little bit. 2019, right before we hit the pandemic, we had our largest graduating class ever attend Iowa Western, and over 2/3 of the class went to Iowa Western. One of the other data points that really, if there's a bright spot in this data, it would be this one that we track is freshman to sophomore persistence. And this is calculated by looking at the percentage of students who start their fall freshman year and then re-enroll in the institution the fall of their sophomore year. And higher ed institutions often struggle with retaining those students. Getting them there is one thing, but keeping them there is another. And out of the pandemic, the start of the pandemic, we know that we are on the right track. And 2019, which is the most recent 2-year data we have, we see some of the highest numbers that we've ever seen for persistence rates, especially in our community college system. You can contrast these here with what we see nationally. If you look at that orange line there at the bottom where it says 67%, that's for our 2-year institutions, that those kids went back to school. Nationally, that's at 58%. So we're 9% above the national average there. 4-year institutions, we're at 89% retention, which is really phenomenal. Nationally, that is at 84%. So we're about 5% above the national average in those two.
Is that class of 2019?
Correct. Class of 2019. So this is the last data we have right before the pandemic.
Question on this post-secondary, does that include trade schools or is that?
Yes.
Okay.
It includes almost, the only institutions that really it does not include would be some of your for-profit institutions that don't participate in the federal student loan programs. As I said earlier, this is completion of a degree is one of the lagging indicators that we have, especially with our push towards D+1. And you can kind of see this rather straight line here that shows the percentage of students who complete a degree within 6 years. And if you look at the class of 2015, you'll see that 24% of the graduates completed a degree within 6 years. But I wanted to also illustrate the impact that we are going to start seeing very soon with D+1. So I put together another chart, and you'll notice that the scale is exaggerated here, but I did that on purpose so you could see the difference between the lines. So if you look here, what you'll see is the projections out for the class of 2018, 2019, and 2021. So 2018 represents the very first class of D+1. That was when we were getting our feet wet, and if you remember, we had 2 welders, and we were so super excited that they completed their welding certificate. And so you'll see that when we look at the blue line, which is the data that we get back from the National Student Clearinghouse, the class of 2018 so far, to date, has had 13% of the students in it complete a degree already. So they're kind of marching toward that 24, 25% that we see. And when you add into that the number of completers that we had before high school graduation, you'll see it hasn't really changed that much. 2 graduates in a class of 589 doesn't move the metric very much. So go forward another year to the class of 2019. That was when we had our very first ECA cohort. That was a very small cohort of students we were experimenting with. You can see the difference there is 2% already in a very small cohort of students. Fast forward to 2020, a big cohort of students. We had 26 kids graduate that year, plus we had a few more +1 pathway students. The Clearinghouse has suggested that we have less than 1% of the class of 2020 has completed a certificate, diploma, or degree in 6 years. But we have 5% of that class that's already completed a certificate, diploma, or degree. We look forward to the class of 2022 or 2021. Remember all of those kids who came before the board in May of last year with their Iowa Western completers. We already know that there is 8% of that graduating class that's already completed a degree within 6 years. So that's what you have to look forward to, is these lines continuing to get farther and farther apart, so that when 6 years rolls around for the class of 2018 and the class of 2019 and 2020 and 2021, we will see that 6-year completion rate go up exponentially. So I'm going to pause there, and Ms. Comine is going to share some information about some of the strategies that we're working on to make sure that we continue to improve our work around post-secondary enrollment.
Thank you, Dr. Worthman, and good evening, President LaFerla, members of the board, and Superintendent Dr. Murillo. Thank you for the opportunity tonight to allow me to provide you some updates around some current happenings in our high schools that are going to support our students in meeting their post-secondary aspirations. I want to start with our strategic goal 2, which is guaranteeing each graduate is future ready, because this goal specifically impacts our students in ensuring that they're going to graduate and earn a second credential and set them up for a post-secondary experience. And so target 1 is for this school year, and you will see that our target is 60% of seniors in the class of 2022 will earn a high school diploma and a second credential. And then our second target looks at our seniors for the following year, and we want 80% of our seniors next year to earn a high school diploma and second credential. And then in the following year of 2024, our goal is to have 100% of our seniors earn a high school diploma and a second credential. I would like to share, and Dr. Worthman did also indicate this in his talking points, that our diploma +1 pathway enrollment is very strong. And it indicates that our seniors this year are on track to meet our goal this year, and our next graduating classes are also on track to meet goals. So that is extremely exciting news. I'm going to reintroduce you to our college and career readiness platform. It is called Zello. It is not new, but just like Dr. Worthman mentioned, it is we're phasing it in because with the pandemic, there's been interruptions for the past couple school years, but also because Zello has great capacity to house so many different things to support us with college and career readiness. And so it is the platform where we house our curriculum, our content, our program of studies, our curriculum guides, all of our courses and pathways are loaded into Zello. The scholarships, diplomas, the students actually interact in all of their lessons and save their work and look forward with not just their current schedule, but their 4-year plan and what they're going to do post-secondary. And so we are, I'm going to focus in on 2 different elements of Zello today. The first one is the curriculum scope and sequence for our students in grades 9 through 12. And the second one is an update on the course planner and the 4-year plans. Just a reminder that Zello is a secondary tool, so it currently is in our middle school and our high school, but for the purpose of today's presentation, I'm going to focus in at the high school level. So this is the curriculum scope and sequence for a high school student. You will see that our students interact with this curriculum at each and every grade level. And when a student enters high school in the 9th grade, it is very age appropriate, developmentally appropriate for who they are. So our 9th graders are really kind of exploring, finding out who they are, what are their interests, exploring careers, they're getting familiar with high school, how do I become a successful high school student, and just gaining experience. And then as they matriculate in the 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade, you can see how that naturally increases for their grade level. There are 4 main core courses that each student takes at each grade level. But each core course has multiple mini activities that students engage in and create work and save work to help them progress through the 4 years of this curriculum. And then, of course, at the 12th grade level, our students are prepared to know what they want to do after graduation. Is it enter post-secondary? Is it enter the military or enter the career field? Next is our course planner and 4-year plan. I just want to briefly define each of those terms. So our course planner, the counselors, myself, and Kyle Forney, we have been working really intensely every week for the past 7.5 weeks to create the course planner in Zello. Because every course offering pathway that we offer is loaded into Zello, okay? And so that's a good thing, because that is going to allow our students to, in the future, we're going to start with a pilot, but it's going to allow us to do our 4-year plan in Zello, but then eventually also schedule our courses at Zello. And so in order to be successful, we're taking the approach of how do we go slow to move fast, okay? Because we want to have a really strong implementation, okay? So when we find little glitches, it's not going to impact implementation and will continue to be strong. So we will finalize the course planner this month. It's about 97% complete. We're also working with Zello representatives. We have a partnership with them. But we're going to engage in a pilot. And so we're going to have our 8th grade students pilot building their 4-year plan in Zello. And the 8th grade students, every 8th grade student every year in the spring builds a 4-year plan. But they're going to do it in Zello this year for the first time. And it will be either in February or March, depending on the middle school the student attends. And the high school counselors work with the 8th grade counselors to complete that process. You may be wondering, what is a 4-year plan? Well, a 4-year plan allows students to plan for the future, as simple as that. And it helps keep them on track to graduate with their diploma +1, but it also allows them to connect their post-secondary goals to their high school courses, which then also influences and impacts our diploma +1. And then at the 9th, 10th, and 11th grade, we're going to do another pilot this spring. And so we are asking advisory teachers at all 3 of those grade levels if they would be willing to volunteer to pilot. And so those pilot groups of students will create their 4-year plan in Zello, but then they will also use the course schedule to create their daily schedule. And so again, moving slow to go fast. So we have a strong implementation, we're really intentional, but also to check the functionality of all the technology, because we need to make sure that everything we import from Zello into PowerSchool, our student information system, that we can find those tweaks with a small group of students rather than the 600 some that we have in our high schools. And then, of course, you may be wondering, where are the 12th graders? Well, our 12th graders will be graduating. And so at the 12th grade level, they have a senior plan and senior interview that they work with their counselors to complete. We've also developed a couple different supports for our Diploma Plus One. I will tell you that our counselors are so super excited about this work, the work that I've talked about, this current work, and they just are bubbling over with excitement to make this happen. And in meeting with them, they came up with these two ideas. And one of them is to increase the number of one-on-one meetings that every student has with their counselor. So right now, every student meets with their counselor one time in the spring for their 4-year plan and also to finalize their schedule. Of course, a student has access to their counselor anytime they need to, but every student in the spring meets with them one-on-one. So we're going to add one extra one-on-one visit, and we're going to do that in the spring. And we're being really purposeful about that because it's going to focus on the Diploma Plus One. Everything that we're doing, Diploma Plus One is intentionally integrated as a through line in everything that we do, because our students are finding success not just now, but when they leave us and when they graduate and move on. And so then the second support is we're going to place the Diploma Plus One on every student's schedule. So it's right there. Right now they have their 8 courses, their teachers, their room number, but we're going to place the Diploma Plus One on their schedule next year. So we're really excited about these additional supports. We're always wanting to make sure we get in front of everything and have those conversations. So then the last initiative that I'd like to share is what we're calling a 3-in-3 initiative with the FAFSA. FAFSA stands for the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. And there's a couple different research points that also support comments that Dr. Vorthman have made. The first research point is listed on the screen, and that is that 92% of seniors who complete FAFSA enroll in college by November following graduation versus 51% who did not complete a FAFSA. So that data point tells us if we have students take the FAFSA, they're going to have a greater chance of enrolling in college, but also sooner. The second piece of research I want to share is that, and it's from the National College Attainment, the same research, that every additional $1,000 in grant aid per student increases post-secondary persistent rates by 4 percentage points. So that's the other piece that Dr. Vorthman talked about in his presentation. We need students to enter post-secondary, we need them to stay, and we need them to finish and graduate. So we see this as an action that we can take to provide support to our students and families to make it happen. And so that's our 3-in-3 initiative, and it's 3 months and 3 initiatives. The first month is January, and it's all about communication. So the 3 main things that are happening in January are, 1, we're going to send a survey to every senior student and parent about the FAFSA. Just a very simple, short survey. Do you know what the FAFSA is? Have you completed it? What are your plans? How can we help? And so that's the first form of communication. Then the second 2 is working with our district communication office to create a FAFSA flyer and a FAFSA video to help inform our students and families and community about FAFSA. What is it? Why is it important? And what can you do? And so then as we move into February, it's all about the identification of students. It's taking the information from the student survey. It's taking information from our teachers specifically our advisory teachers who know our students really well because they work with the students around the college and career readiness curriculum in Zello. So they've had some conversations already to let us know who can use a little bit extra support, or who needs that little push, or who do we need to reach out to. We also pair experts, what we call experts in the field. We may ask somebody from Iowa Western Community College or Upward Bound or somebody else to come and support us, the teacher, or the student and families in completing the FAFSA. And then in the month of March, we're calling it a completion blitz, and that is to see what else is out there and who else still needs to complete the FAFSA. And we continue to use the communication tools, the identification tools that I've already identified. We also receive a report from our teaching and learning office every month because we have a data sharing agreement with Iowa that lets us know these students have completed the FAFSA, these students have started the FAFSA, but they still have certain components they haven't completed. These students haven't started the FAFSA, and our counselors are constantly looking at that spreadsheet to see how we can identify students. And then they are also brainstorming incentives for this as well, so we can bring students in small group and one-on-one. So in summary, we are just really excited about Goal 2, all of our strategic goals, about this work. We're excited because we're taking actions that are really personalized towards all of our students, and that allows our students to invest in themselves. And it gives them a really good reason to care about who they are and where they're going and have a hand in their destiny. And it doesn't get any better than that. And so we're really excited about the next few months to help our students meet their post-secondary aspirations. So with that, Dr. Worthman and I are available to take any questions.
Any questions from the board?
I've got one, well, a couple. So it was really exciting to hear about utilizing the Zillow format. And once those pilot programs have been implemented as the mode of operation for our students moving forward, I would assume then that we would be able to use that information to help determine what resources would be necessary in the future years based on the information that students are listing in their four-year high school program, so that we can look at what those needs are as far as human resources and material resources, so that we can have a better understanding of what the budget process would look like. Would that be a fair assessment of where we're going with using that Zillow format as an indicator of what our students want?
So I think you've done a really nice job of describing a continuous improvement process. And so Zellow's our platform. It is our teachers, our counselors, and our students and everybody else that makes it come alive, and the magic to it, all those different conversations and things like that. But it does provide us information and data that we can use to determine best next steps. And so an example is the scope and sequence. There are 4 main core lessons, but as counselors and teachers identify maybe some gaps or errors, there's the ability for them to create their own activities and put it or slide it in there to support the students. And so yes, we do constantly use data and information to help inform next steps.
Okay. Thank you.
I was wondering, do you have any data on first-generation students, if they're entering post-secondary and as well completing?
I will ask Dr. Worthman that.
That's not a data point that the Clearinghouse tracks currently. We have some anecdotal information around that, most recently through the work with Potawatomi Promise, which has kind of prioritized those students.
I had a similar question. Is there any data points as far as the 4-year plans that get put together, in their freshman year, and them changing the plans as far as changing a direction?
So the four-year plan, yes, they create a four-year plan so they can plan out, but people are going to change their minds, kids will change their minds, we change our minds, so they can make some adaptations, absolutely.
Let me follow up a little bit on that. One of the things that Dr. Borthman has done in really helping us really strengthen the D+1 is we've tried to find every pathway has no dead ends, so that students can get on and off and change gears and then re-enter as they find something that is more interesting to them. But the goal is to give them as many opportunities to kind of, by their senior year, kind of know, or junior year, what they want to really pursue. And I think that is what is really great, is that every D+1 pathway that they enter in, there is no dead end. And so that's a real strength to this and really hoping that, as Ms. Comine talked about, the 4-year, this is really our first year to really go after a good pilot. We've had Zelo, Ms. Smith, who's here in the audience here, that's with the AEA. She really began to roll this out for us, and the pandemic hit. Because when I had lunch at TJ with the students, Melissa was with me, and as I asked them about Zelo to tell me where they are, my seniors remembered from 2 years ago when it started, and then they said when COVID hit and we went home, we really never got back to it. But my sophomore sitting with me went, yeah, I don't really know if I can tell you a lot about that, Dr. Mello. So that's why we felt like coming and bringing in the 8th graders, and then also getting the pilots in the high school, and then really embedding that into our culture, that this becomes a driving tool, and then for our students to see the D+1 pathways and make those connections. I think it really will strengthen, because it's not just something a counselor talks or I talk when I go and meet with them, or a principal, or just one teacher. It's something now they begin to see in several places. And that's what's going to make it so powerful. Plus, I see what I need to take if I want to do this. And I see what I can exit and go over here, and I've taken this math and this, and it just kind of puts it there. Plus, parents get to see it. And I think that'll be really great, because I know that Mr. Arthur, with having students in secondary, he'll begin to see this really roll out and begin to and see what this looks like, because his son will be younger and in it longer than what your daughter will be. And you'll be able to see how that tracking and what that looks like.
I'll be firsthand on this in February and March.
That's what I thought. I didn't want to say that, but yes.
Any other questions?
Did we already, so when do you start the pilot for the 9th and 10th grade, or the high school kids currently? Or has some already started? Because I've heard kids talking about this already, so.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if they're talking about it. Both of our high schools are working with their teachers on January 17th to get this process up and going. So the pilot will start this spring. They'll build their 4-year plan, and then we'll look at the course schedule as well. Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I also am very excited about the FAFSA. And when Ms. Comine talks about that, that is something that we track. And we track that among the MOAC school districts. And I do want you to know, as I just quickly went back and pulled up some data, and we've always had about 50% of our students completing that until we hit the pandemic. And then when we hit the pandemic, it was so funny, we dropped down to 45 and 43%, 45 at AL and 43. And so to see our counselors embracing this again, because I'm, as a superintendent, I'm competitive with how my counterparts are doing, right? So I want Council Bluffs schools to be right up there with everyone else, and to see that they're taking on this initiative. And it just feels like our counselors are starting to rally around the D+1. And that's seeing it become a part of our thread is when you start seeing the vision come alive. And the legwork that Dr. Borthman, Ms. Smith, our high school principals, Paul, who was here before, and the work going on at Iowa Western, and now to start seeing it really be embedded in our high schools, that's when initiatives, visions, strategic goals are really starting to get at ground zero. and that's when change occurs. So thank you for working with the counselors on that.
One question for maybe Dr. Vorthman. So obviously, there's going to be a lot of students who are just going to jump straight to work given the incredibly low unemployment numbers and higher wages we have in the area. Is that going to fall on districts, colleges? I mean, to try to engage those kids once things normalize? I feel like, you know, give a year or 2 years out, you're going to have this group of kids who probably will be re-looking at like, hey, I should go back to school. You know, I know we've tracked and we've chased a lot of kids over time, you know, trying to see who's moved on and who's stayed in college. I mean, I just don't know if that's something we'll be doing or conceptually.
I think what you've identified really kind of puts an exclamation point on D+1. You've heard Dr. Murillo say multiple times, why should kids have to wait? And so what we can do is we can provide students with those post-secondary credentials before they even get out of high school. So if they choose to enter the workforce right after high school, not only are they able to be a productive member of society immediately, but they've also got that training that they can always lean on. Re-engaging students after they leave high school, that's anybody's guess at this point. You know, we've done some things over the past, almost 15 years now of trying to track graduates after high school graduation. It's like trying to catch water through a sieve. It's nearly impossible because they scatter to all ends of the earth. And I know the foundation has tried to really put some resources behind a robust alumni and friends network, which helps us kind of keep track of some of those students. But it proved to be very, very difficult to keep in contact with students after they leave our doors. And unfortunately, our workforce development in Iowa does not have a way to track those students either, because we've gone down that road as well.
So Chris's team could work on this.
Yeah.
If there's no other questions, I want to ask Dr. Borthman for a favor. You read me a text from Kathy.
Yeah.
From a student from Canesville.
Yeah.
Would you mind reading that to
Sure.
the board? I mean, this is kind of like the cherry on top of what the program is doing for our students. And a lot of times we think this is only students that are at Thomas Jefferson or AL. But this is for all of our students, all of our high school students. We want to be a part of D+1.
Yeah. So this is from Kathy Schmedding. If you recall, she's the +1 Pathways counselor at Iowa Western. Some people refer to her as the Iowa Western mom, but she's the one that takes care of our kids in ECA, their primary counselor, as well as students who are out there on our half-day programs. And so she just shared this with me right before Christmas break. She said, I met with one of our Canesville students who's enrolled in Passages. Passages is one of our special education programs housed at Canesville that is designed for high school students who have some significant needs for special education. And she's enrolled at Iowa Western for classes next semester. She finished her graduation requirements early, so she's been out on Iowa Western on campus most of the year with me. She just finished taking public speaking and is in class with many of our ECA students. She came up to me today and said to me, I quote, Miss, that's what she calls me, I feel so smart that I'm sitting in college classes with ECA students. I mean, look at me. I couldn't make it at AL, but here I am doing what I need to do to be with the smart kids. Bottom line, we're doing the right thing here for kids. So, great testament.
That's great. Thank you.
And at this time, we are very excited to have our guests who are with us this evening from the Gree Hills AEA. And Dr. Haas, we'd like to invite you up to the podium for the presentation. I don't know who's loading it for you. John, Diane?
Diane.
Diane is?
Are you clicking our slides forward, or do we do it up here? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks for having us. We just want to take about 15 minutes of your time. This year, our board and administration has taken our AEA show on the road a little bit, and going out to, over the next 3 years, we'll be visiting all 43 of the school districts that our AEA supports at their board meetings, so that our board members, as representatives of the community, have for sure understand the kinds of services, supports, and investment that we make with the dollars we collect from you and from the state to invest back into your schools and into your children. So we have several people here tonight. Council Bluffs is lucky in that we have a 9-member board, and we have 3 board members who represent all or a smidgen of Council Bluffs on the board. So we have Ed Gams here. Ed Gams lives in Logan, but he's got a little north corner of Council Bluffs School District. And then we have Jake Powers, who represents sort of the north and west corner of Council Bluffs. And we have a new board member, as you know, who's representing the rest of the bulk of Council Bluffs School District on our board, and that's Julie Smith. We also have Joe Warchek here. Joe is one of our administrators who supports primarily your special education program and our special education staff working in your schools. So they each have a little bit of a slide to just show you just a few quick snapshots about our school services and supports so that you understand what you have available and what you're currently using. So I think Jake is first.
I wanted to tell you a little bit about Green Hills AEA. As you can see from the territory, and this is really small, we go as far as West Harrison, ICAM Manning, down to Central Decatur, and also Hamburg, South Page. So it's a pretty large area. In that area, we have 37,626 students, 3,005 teachers, and 9,000 square miles. So we have a lot of windshield time for our staff. We have 43 districts, 17 counties, and 6 non-public schools as well in that area. As far as the Green Hills go, we have 300, and we had more than this, wasn't it? Like 317? 318. 318 area staff. We work from 8 offices in our territory. We provide services to local school buildings, work with teachers and administrators through professional development, consultation, and school improvement strategies and services. All right, just enter. There it is. Yay. So you've already met us, actually. As they said, Ed is here serving District 5. Julie's with us now. We're so pleased to have her. She's with District 8, and I have District 9. So thanks for having us today.
How long have you been on the board?
Oh, I think it's like 8-9 years now. So I hope you're able to hear me.
You're a grandparent of our Council Bluffs School District children.
Yes. Actually, my daughter received services, and then my granddaughter came along and received services as well, which is the reason why I wanted to give back. They really made a difference for both of my family members and helped out the teachers a lot. Thank you very much.
Is this where we heckle?
Yes, you may heckle at any time now. As the newest member, I'm sorry, I'm going to take off my mask, sorry about that. I'm not even sure this one is my slide now that I say this.
No, I don't think it is.
See, new members mess up all the time, so to all you new members on boards, welcome. No. Is this you, Dad?
That's mine.
You get up here then, I'll come back.
As you know, we have 9 different districts on the AEA board, and because they need to be all about the same size, I have a little bit of Council Bluffs, and then I have Trainer and Tri-Center and Underwood and Logan Magnolia. And so that makes it interesting for me. I think these ladies may be only going to do this once. I'm going to do it several times. So this section, it talks a little bit about staff development that's available. And I think it's good to know that these are last year's numbers because that was a complete year. And so when you look at the things that are up there, you can see that there are a lot of services available, and each district uses those in varying amounts. Statewide training, you can see that this is those two numbers on the left, the blue number and the one right below it, are kind of go together. There's a consortium that's available for staff to take classes. And so 1,781 of those classes out of Council Bluffs last year. And then you can see that number. That represents an estimation of what it would cost to go out and get that training if you had to buy it on the open market. And of course, that training was available at no cost to the staff to take those classes. And then over on the right, these are ones that are offered through our agency itself, different professional learning offerings. And there were 143 of those used by the Council Bluffs staff last year. And then you see below that, staff members attending social emotional learning support symposium. There were 8 of those. And then there talks about a mini grants the last 2 years. The career and technical education grants are available. That works through us. It's not our funding, but it's channeled through, and all districts are allowed to apply for that, and Council Bluffs received funding twice each, and you can see the amounts of money there that were available for different things programming. I spent about 40 years as a teacher and administrator in school districts. Retired in 2005. Yes, I'm older than I look. A lot has changed on that. The whole career and technical education is, and I think for the better. I think there's a lot more opportunities now, and I was excited to listen to you talking about the programs that you are working with your students. We're trying to get the same kind of thing going up in our part of the world, working with Iowa Western. And we see Iowa Western, I think, becoming even more interested in working with schools than ever before. You're probably seeing that too. So it's a great opportunity for students there. So Jason Plourde, you see his picture up there. And you know him, some of you. He is the person that's kind of oversees this particular part of our programming. So.
I can come up 3 or more times. I don't know. Yes, this is a slide I recognize. So I have completed one whole board meeting as a member of Green Hills AEA Board of Directors. And so I'm really relying on all the knowledge I gleaned from Lori Duran to talk about special education services in our district. So thank you, Lori, for this knowledge that I've had working with you these past several years. AEA is required to attend, AEA personnel are required to attend certain IEPs for students, not all, but certain ones. The first one on there is called the initial evaluation process. So any initial IEP does need to have an AEA representative there as part of the process. This past year, 264 initial IEPs were done in Council Bluffs. Also, the number, every 3 years, every IEP has a full evaluation or reevaluation process, and that is also another time when AEA is required to attend those proceedings. And this past year, it was 484 reevaluations that happened. In addition, those are kind of probably more widely known, but something that maybe not is known as much are the validation of the individual IEPs. Every IEP, whether it is an initial one, a 3-year, or just an annual review, or an addendum, or anything that happens with an IEP has to be validated by staff at Area 13. There are 2 staff members that you'll learn a little bit more about who does the evaluation or who does the validation process on this. And last year, 4,177 IEPs were validated through Area 13. In addition to, that would have been for the K-12 community in Council Bluffs. In addition to that, there are also the preschool or birth to 3 IEPs that go on as well. And there were 56 initial ones of those, the IFSPs. Tracy, I know you could jump right in and tell us more about that. And validated 78 IEPs for those level kids. Additionally, to that, you'll see a list of services. If you have really keen eyes, you can see a list of services there. Assistive technology, audiology, work with the autism team, behavior team, brain injury team, everything from speech and language to physical therapy. Services like those come through Area 13 that we use for children who are in need of those. We request them as needed or as determined by their IEP, and all those folks work through Area 13, or excuse me, Green Hills AEA, that's how old I am, I called it by its old name, Green Hills AEA to provide those services to our students here in Council Bluffs. Ivan Gentry is the executive director over this program. The heckling must stop now because.
Thank you for having us. So as I said, I'm Joe Warchek, and I'm a Director of Specialized Services and Support, so I work under Ivan Gentry. And I'm not going to go through all that. Really, the main thing that I'm here to do is to be that relationship builder and connection between our staff that work in Council Bluffs schools, primarily those that I supervise, which are our special education representatives, which most of those are school psychologists. We do have a special education consultant in that group and a school social worker, and then speech language pathologists. Those are the two largest groups of AA staff that are like on the ground all the time in the district. I supervise 23 of those staff. There is actually 25 of those staff. You count portions of people that serve some of the outlying districts as well, with 13 SPED reps and 12 SLPs. And really my job is to supervise and support them, connect and advocate for the work that they do and support, and really partnership, working with Plourde Durand and Dr. Wes Galusha. And it helping provide access and encouraging access to some of the other services that we provide as well, even if it's not someone that I supervise. So if there's connections that need to be made with some of our specialty teams or physical therapists, occupational therapists, or some of those types of situations. So.
Okay, where's the arrow? There we go. So as you saw, our organization is organized around a multi-tiered system of support. So we have what is available to all students, all staff, and that was Dr. Plourde's area. And we have a second tier called targeted services. So that is available for students who are not necessarily in special education, but have identified different kind of needs. So gifted, English language learners, social emotional learning, students with mental health needs. Those kinds of needs are led by our executive director, Angie Hance. Formerly was Jenny Barnett, who moved to Harlan as superintendent. So we also run 3 classrooms called Rising Hope Academy, which are for children with severe behavior, mental health needs that Council Bluffs does not use but could choose to if you wanted to send students there. We also run school-based interventionists. Your graduation coaches are hired through Green Hills AEA and work in your schools. We have Rachel's Challenge coming to all of our districts. We've written a federal grant to be able to bring Rachel's Challenge, which is a full-day experience for students, high school, middle school, and elementary level, about school violence and suicide and treating each other well. Rachel's Challenge. Rachel Scott was a young woman, the first woman murdered at the Columbine shootings, and her family has started this organization that brings to schools a very powerful, moving experience about how we treat each other and how we work together. And that is available to all the Council Bluffs schools in the next 2 years if they chose to take advantage of that experience for children. We also, under Angie, is all of our early childhood programming, and I know early childhood is a big growth area for you with your new facility coming on pretty soon. So you have Mandy Sanders, I believe, working full-time. She's our AEA person that works in your schools as a coach, a trainer, support person to all of your preschool teachers so that you're getting quality instruction for the children in your schools. So those are the kinds of areas that Angie oversees and the kinds of services we have available to school districts there. In Council Bluffs, you can see you had 180 early childhood referrals to, helping children in your school, in your preschool programs. And early access referrals, those early access is 0 to 3, and those children are referred to us either by the parents themselves, Vision of Family Services, social workers, children who might be in foster care or whose parents might have a concern that their child or baby isn't developing normally. Those get referred to us, and then we reach out to them, and those people actually go into homes and work with the families to do everything we can to get the children as ready as possible to enter school, caught up or ready to go. So that's Angie's role. And then you all know this gentleman as well, Dave Fringer. This is a newer area for us in terms of providing information technology support to school districts and digital learning support through our digital learning consultants. And I know we have some of our consultants in your district working with your teachers, as well as our media services, which is another thing that your teachers take a great deal of advantage of. So Dave is over all of that. We bring vans twice a week to every single school in your district. Teachers can order. We have a huge catalog of materials, resources, kits. We have a planetarium. We have those things that you put on that you can see virtually. I forget what those, I can never think of the name of those. Teachers can check those out, books, literature sets, manipulative kits, all kinds of things that they can check out, and that saves you money and that the district doesn't have to buy those. They're available and they can be sent back and on to another district. So those vans, our vans, come to every single school every week, twice a week, to bring those, drop those off, pick them up, take them back. Dave also makes sure your district, because you're so well set up with your IT team, but something that's been very beneficial to our more rural districts is help with their E-rate application. And Dave said he was just here yesterday and maybe had a little conversation about running some ideas, consulting a little bit with the team about what you might do with your E-rate application. Some of our districts who don't have technology specialists, can't afford them or aren't large enough to have them, Dave or his team, our guys will go out and go to that district and help that district look at what they've got and what they need and what they should be doing. And some districts actually hire us and our staff to be their technology specialists in their district. You aren't doing any of that because you're large enough, of course, to have your own staff. And you can see that those numbers on the column there are just the different kinds of things that your teachers are checking out from our media and that our vans are bringing out to your school. And this, again, is last year's numbers. So that gives you an idea of those two groups. So that's sort of what we do. That's sort of who we are. We have, I think we totaled up as over $4 million pretty easily invested right back into your district and the staff that we hire and the people that we bring to you. So we hope you know and believe that you get your money's worth out of the AEA and the tax dollars and the state funding that comes our way to serve you. I think we have a little video next that we put together, just showing some of our people in your schools. So.
It's a short little video, and one of the other groups that I didn't mention earlier, kind of the next largest group that's on the ground that's working in the district, that's a partnership with the district, would be our school-based interventionists or the grad coaches. There's 9 of them working in the district in the middle and high school buildings. I just want to say that because there was a couple little interviews here just with a couple of staff, and one of them in particular is one of the grad coaches. So. Oh, there's no way. Yeah. This one right here?
Yeah.
If you disconnect the clutch and reconnect. Oh, no worries. We'll get it. Nope, you'll be okay. Desktop. sorry. Present mode, file, present, where is it? There you go.
Doreen and I review and process all Council Bluffs IEPs, which is a student's individual educational plan for special education services. This includes all students from the age of 3 to 21. Last year alone, we reviewed over 4,000 IEPs to ensure they meet state requirements and funding for Council Bluffs School District.
We also do this for IFSPs, which cover for 3-year-olds. We are also a primary contact for teachers experiencing system issues. We are there to walk them through step by step.
The role is so important because I can't tell you how many kids have said, I don't know what I would have done, if I wouldn't have had you help me catch up in English, or if I wouldn't have had you just come to and lay out all my struggles. You tell me it's going to be okay, and you mean it. Like, you're here every day.
It has been very helpful because as a senior, you get very sidetracked a lot. And I'm a huge procrastinator, so I tend to lose track of all. So I definitely tend to see myself like slipping sometimes.
When you work with seniors, there's a lot of trying to catch up on credits. Some students need some motivation to come to school. So there's that piece of chasing down the time, trying to come to school. It might take multiple times to reach out. But one of those times, I mean, those kids realize, hey, this person does care. Because they won't leave me alone. And I just think where we've come from in the last year and a half, kids are looking for someone just to listen and say, I'm for you. They're looking for people to cheer them on, come alongside. Because after you're out of school, for weeks, it's really hard to come back.
I was struggling through some stuff, and she really put me on the right track on just finding how to pick myself back up from that. Because I think with that, with last year with the whole entire COVID situation and being hybrid, that was very hard for everyone.
A lot of them are carrying a lot of baggage, and you would be blown away by some of the stuff these kids are dealing with, yet they show up every day. So I think all of us want somebody just to listen and care, and that's my job. My job is to listen and care and come alongside and say, you can do this, you can graduate, and I'm with you. I mean, we're on this boat together.
I want to go into either business financing or I want to be a music teacher, so go to music education.
That wasn't supposed to happen. Finally, we do have a QR code, which we'll just take so you can see a list of all of the staff and who are tied to Council Bluffs. So that's something that you could go to and check out. But thank you for the time to present. You know, it's a kind of a dipstick of everything that we do, but I want to be able to share. So.
We want to thank you also for your support and services and partnership. Mr. LaFurla, that concludes our presentation this evening.
Okay. Thank you very much for being here this evening, and that concludes our business. Before we adjourn, I just want to mention for the public record, school board members met for a work session earlier with Susan Boyle from the Public Employee Relations Board and learned, had a presentation about the contract negotiation process as just part of our continuous professional development as a group of board members, which we do prior to every board meeting. So with that, we're adjourned.
Thanks, Carly.
Yeah.